Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Marketplace Growth by Accoil Analytics. We're back. We took some time off and I sent out a survey in the recent week. And so, one of the top things that you said that you were interested in hearing more from us about was user engagement and customer retention. So, today we're going to talk about three ways that we look for signals that someone might be ready to leave a product.
Yeah, lovely to be back, everyone.
So we've got three things, and this is based on experience back in the ThinkTilt days, building up ProForma, some of the signals that we looked for to indicate that someone might be ready to stop using our form builder at the time. And we think it's generally applicable to most B2B SaaS products. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about here is qualitative signals like sentiment and how are you using support? So Kate, I'm going to throw it to you and say, here's the top thing that we thought about here was qualitative signals from your support tickets. Walk me through your thinking around that and how do you use that to kind of as an indicator that someone might be ready to go?
Well, for me, it was all about what they asked you and how they asked you and how happy they were when they asked you. I did like to use any of the rating systems that you could get, but for me, it was always about the content and the tone was really important to me because it actually helped you identify. And I really like to even get the really rude support ticket because that really used to speak volumes. And you particularly, if you then jumped on a call with them just so that they could talk them you through, you generally got so much from it, including often threats to leaving. And which again didn't really faze me because to me it was all about if you kind of engage and help people through that exercise, you generally turn them so they do become your advocates. Where you struggle is where your product is not quite right, and that's a huge one, isn't it? Product engagement. If you don't have your product right, but if you don't do any of this, being close to the customer, you don't get that. And of course, you do have your systems behind your data analytics systems behind. But these are the bare basics. If you don't have anything, these are the things you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Very much, and very much getting all of your any of your customer facing people to kind of feed that back through to the rest of the team, so not silo orientated.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I'd add on that is recent tools that you can now use to run sentiment analysis. So like get into ChatGPT, pump in if you're paying for it and you don't want to share or train the models on your support tickets. But I think there's opportunities there to kind of take yourself out of it even. Obviously, a lot of this is going to be gut feel. What am I picking up? Like what emotions am I getting out of these support tickets? But you could also run analysis through ChatGPT right now to see what's the general state of things. And if you're getting a big account and multiple people from that account are sending in support tickets, it might be a good idea to run sentiment analysis on those tickets and just see how's this account faring from a qualitative
Yeah.
perspective. Uh, Second thing we have here is following on that support is just that volume of support tickets, looking at each account, how many support tickets are coming in, what does the volume look like? Are you seeing trends across accounts, within accounts, that sort of thing? And I think that's something that we kind of looked at with Proforma. I don't remember going too deep on that, but that's something where I think personally I'll be watching that a bit more closely now with Accoil Analytics just to see what's bubbling up from our accounts.
But remember, we did used to pipe it into HubSpot, Pete. So we did used to be able to classify and segment. I did used to do a bit of analysis between the relationship between tenure, renewal date. And we did have other tools we used that actually gave us some insights. So we weren't just completely relying on that.
Walk us through that. So you said piping it into HubSpot. If
Yeah.
someone watching this has HubSpot, a CRM, what were you piping in and what were you looking at?
Well, we actually, HubSpot can get pretty expensive. So we started to be a bit judicious after, because you can get your startup subscription rate, but then it can be much more expensive. So for me, because it automatically segments around industry size, etc., and then you compare against your subscription size, compare that against how active they've been with you, you started to get insights. We could also see, because we had built-in analytics, which in the paid version they could opt out, we also could see how active they were. We could see their frequency of use. So in the early days, we actually used to watch a lot of people and how they used us. So we had to kind of pull all of that together to make a hypothesis around who our ideal customer was and what were the things that they wanted, which I know always sounds boring because I'm always going back to that. But if you lean into the sale, it'll just take you if you get it right.
So I think, yeah, what that does bring us back to is, yeah, talk to your customers more.
Yeah.
Like you said before, getting those angry customers on the phone is actually usually a huge help. A product manager at Atlassian said to me, the angrier, the better. That's what he wanted to talk to is I don't want people that are going to come here and tell me everything they love about the product. I want to talk to the ones that really don't like me.
Yeah. And
That's probably where you
yeah.
get your learnings.
And, the uninstall messages, for example, that
Mm,
Atlassian Marketplace does, and it gives you these very broad categories. And so I used to spend my time responding and following to all of these. And I was
mhm.
lucky if I got maybe 10% came back to me on why they were unhappy. So all in all, I didn't find it a very valuable pathway. And I then pivoted my thinking with the use of the tools to actually get the signals earlier in the piece. So for me, it was about, and I don't know in hindsight whether I actually structured it all the best way, but for the signals of how well engaged they were and how activated, like how many of the key critical steps had they actually used our product for. And we were lucky in a way that we could see pretty big events that if, for example, we did forms, everybody. So if you had a big event of where people started downloading all their data, all their exported forms, etc., you knew something was happening. Now, for me, if you got to that point, you've probably missed it in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that there's probably a point of no return. I'm going to segue us into the third and final thing that we wanted to talk about today, and that
Yeah.
was product data and product analytics. Surprise, surprise, right? But so I'll just continue on that. Like if you're looking at like the signals from your product usage, yeah, if they've hit the export all button, it may be too late. Still an opportunity to learn from someone, but yeah, maybe the sun has set on that account for
Mhm.
you. But what are some of the other product related signals that you could look for? Let's use ProForma as an example, and maybe we can kind of riff on that and
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
what else you might be looking for event wise in your product data.
Well, so for us, of course, all the low level stuff of the logging on, logging off, and making sure that they access and use the system. But for me, the signals were that if they actually designed and created multiple forms and published them, and then were actively using them, you kind of knew you were onto something. Then also, if you had the other things where they started to have the next level of complexity, where they started to use conditional logic and they started to use those sorts of things, that you kind of realize that they're really starting to use and custom fields. So one of the big reasons why people bought Proforma was because the ability to be flexible and the ability to have your own fields and not rely on a custom field. So for me, that feature was a really important measure that if they were using that, it means that they were probably going to stay with you because they've obviously got use cases where they needed to have
Mm.
better designed forms in the way they ask questions.
Yeah, well, I think conversations that you and I have been having recently, I think, are relevant here, where we're talking about different levels of engagement and basically like onboarding and activation. We've talked about a
Yeah.
few times recently, you and I, that
Yeah.
you're going to have stages of maturity of your customers, right? So initially, you don't necessarily want them to be using all the advanced features. So it's kind of looking at where are these accounts or customers in their activation period, in their adoption of the product, and then how mature and how do we get them to mature through that. So I think the signals really depend on what those cohorts look like, right? Sure,
And I
should they
would
be?
argue that there's kind of there's themes, if depending on what you're offering, you probably fit in a category. And, the quickest and easiest way to find out what are the most important things that things value is just, talk to your salespeople talk to your customer support people, and probably your product manager. You've got to be out there talking to customers, and you'll then work out the things that you think are the most important. And then you need to monitor and watch for them.
So to wrap us up here, so just talking about product data, but to come back to the top here and say, looking at that qualitative data, are you talking to your customers, understanding what they're getting value, how they're getting value from your product, but also those ones that are maybe likely to leave, what are they asking for that you're not providing? So that loop can basically just start to spin, and you can see like customers are asking for this particular feature that's on the backlog. We don't have it. They're obviously not using it. They're not engaging with the product in a way that means that they're going to stick around. So there's just becomes this feedback loop in the company of listening to the customers, almost proving it out with that product data, like what's actually happening,
Mhm.
and then working across the team. And as always, talking to more customers, not
I
a product
think,
problem.
many people get away from their customers as they get more successful. They talk less to them. Beware of scaling without talking to people is
Yeah,
my
agreed.
advice to people, because you kind of lose the DNA when you start to do that.
Yeah, I think you can. I think broad level here is marrying that qualitative feedback that you're getting with that quantitative feedback that you can get from your product data, painting a whole picture and seeing exactly how people are actually using and engaging with your products. And again, talking to them and really getting a sense of what they want and need from you. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Kate, anything left on this one that you'd like to say?
No, other than it's a continuous improvement, and don't overthink it, is how I would say. Start small, be very clear on what you're trying to achieve, and then go from there. Because you can
Awesome.
overeat these things, something fierce.
Certainly can. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to get more of this and in more depth, you can head over to marketplacegrowth.substack.com, where we send a newsletter out. And listening to you in that last survey, we're going to switch from weekly to bi-weekly now. But love hearing from you. Leave us a comment below. What did you learn from the video? Head over, join that newsletter, and we'll see you over there. Thanks again.
Take care, people, and more sales to you.